Welcome to Books on Air, the podcast you really don't want to miss. I'm Suzanne Harris, and today you're going to get a sneak peek behind the scenes at what it's like to be an author. You'll hear the backstory behind their book. You'll hear about who or what inspires them. You'll find out where their ideas come from, and who knows, you might even get the inside scoop on a new project. And if you want to know more about them or their work, we'll tell you where to find them on social media. Joining me today is Reverend Jussie S. Jackson, and he's here to talk about his book, Minorities Incorporated, a story of civil chicanery involving just about everybody. Welcome, Reverend Jackson.
Thank you, Suzanne. Pleasure to be here.
Now, before we really start to talk about the book, I'd like to talk about you just a little. Travel back with me in time. When did you first decide that you wanted to write? Writers usually have a backstory, and I'm always curious about what makes the writer the writer. Sometimes it's as simple as when they were kids, they started reading and they were influenced by something that they read and they thought, I can do this, and so they started writing. Sometimes they write and a professor or a teacher sees a spark and they encourage the kid to write. Sometimes there's something that happens in a person's life and it's some kind of seminal event that happens to that person, and it sparks something in them. They think, I need to share this with the world. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So what's the backstory, Reverend Jackson, behind you?
When I was in school, I think my freshman year, high school, I had a English teacher, and he gave us an assignment to write a summary of books that we had to read. We could choose the book, and we had to write a summary in this book. And I, even though I've been an English teacher off and on over the years, I detested English class when I was in school. I don't know what the reason was. I guess all the rules of grammar and things. But anyway, I was heavy in sports, and I knew I should spend more time in academics, but I sometimes resisted this having to read books and write these summaries. So I came up with my own stories, and when I wrote this one story about this farmer, tobacco or a coffee farmer in South America, who would travel up the mountains and do his thing with his beans and everything, bring them back and sell them for his family. And his name was Juan Diego, and he became very successful and helped his family. And I wrote this and submitted it, and the teacher gave me an A, and he really said, this is a great story. And I said to myself, I just hope he doesn't see the commercial on television about Juan Diego and the Colombian coffee, I guess, he was promoting. And I went, hey, this is a good gig. I mean, I can, write things that are kind of like, semi-plagiaristic, but I didn't want it to be that. But it made him happy, and I got a good grade, and I didn't have to read a whole book. So I tended to drift into this thing about enjoyment of the writing process and entertaining, I guess, and bring in some humor and things of that nature. Because again, I was heavy into sports, and I was sort of a lazy student, if you want to say, even though I did okay in grade-wise. But so I took shortcuts. But then later on, I found that writing is a dynamic profession. I've done a lot of writing for politicians and newspapers and all these different avenues, and I always try to make my writing well put together, well constructed, as much as I could. And one of the biggest, problems I had was, it goes back to my detesting English was now at school, problems with grammar. My biggest thing is commas. I always hung up on the use of, I call them damn commas. So anyway, I just continued, and I felt good about it, that I wrote this book out here in the islands, and it involves some of the island people. And I've had island people read it, and they enjoyed it. And I don't know if it reaches the mass market, but writing, it gives you the opportunity to express yourself and be able to rewrite and change things. And it's a lot safer here in the island to write things and rewrite than say things and blurt out things that you can get in trouble, because of the sensitivity of the topic of the book I wrote, Minorities Incorporated, of course, involves races and people. And I'm in a mixed marriage, meaning I have a wife of color and my children. So I enjoy all these different rainbow families and colors and things, but there's also some problems in right now, and the things being divisive. I hate to say it, but so I tried to write something that would encourage better understanding between people and bring some humor in, and so we help each other. We all live together and try to be happy together.
Now the book's the book's really intended to be a satire. Am I right?
Yes, definitely.
Let's give the listeners a little overview of the plot of the book. Tell them about Paddy Puzo.
Well, Paddy Puzo didn't want to get involved in civil rights and American revisionary politics, but a bizarre midnight taxi ride in the most dangerous part of Los Angeles abruptly catapults him into the wild and unpredictable world of Minorities Incorporated. After barely surviving his involuntary entry into the more hazardous side of civil rights, Puzo's dysfunctional adventures take him to Washington, D.C., and subsequently to a Pacific island aptly referred to as the Island of Thieves, where he is continuing confrontations with racial enlightenment finally lead him to hiding from the CIA while working at a remote and dilapidated pig farm somewhere in the Philippines.
Now, every book, Reverend Jackson, has two stories. You just gave us an overview of the story that the reader will get when they read Minorities Incorporated. What's the backstory? Where did you get the idea for this book? How did it come into being?
Well, most writers, especially their first novel, because I drafted this initially 35 years ago when I grew up in L.A. and experienced some of the things that are in this book. There's other people involved, but I did drive a taxi in Los Angeles, and I was in the most dangerous garage and worked the night shift, and I was pretty much the only white guy driving around at night in these rough parts of town in L.A., and it was quite an interesting experience, and I had to work my way out of several tense situations with customers and with violent action. So it showed me that there is problems in our society between races, and I found that I solved some of my problems by just talking and doing my best to get myself out of a difficult jam. Like one night, my cab was surrounded in South Central LA by a lot of African American folks who were upset that I was going to charge my customers, the fare. And I said, well, that's my job. I have to drive them to a place and collect money. And they said I was taking advantage of them. And it got into, kind of a dangerous situation where I was realizing that they just were upset. And I can understand different ethnic groups being upset about other ethnic groups, and because there's differences and there's misunderstandings. But I just realized that I could be seriously hurt, and I decided, well, what do you guys want me to do? And they said, we want you to do something to show us that you don't like the yellow cab company. We find it that it's owned by the white people, it's oppressive, and you have all the money, and we're tired of it. So, to be frank, I urinated all over my taxi cab, and it made them all laugh. And they said, all right, you're one of us, and we'll let you leave without beating you up. So I got back in my cab and stepped on the gas pedal and got out of there. And so I found that, we as people, we have to do things sometimes, borderline a little bit of craziness, but to survive. But I also found out that even when there are tense situations, there's ways to make people realize we're people, all of us, no matter which color or race or religion, and we should try to get along and do our best. So again, the book has some of these incidents that I experienced myself firsthand, but I changed them, of course, because of other friends that told me stories that they had about driving, because my best friend in the taxi business when I was there driving, who gave me all the tips how to stay out of trouble, was a black taxi driver, and he told me all the things to keep me out of trouble, and I really appreciated his tips, and he was a real nice person. So again, people help each other, and then other things about the book. I did travel to the islands and got involved in politics here, and saw some interesting things, and plus my father and mother, my father was a dark Sicilian, my mother was Norwegian. She could get sunburnt if she was stood too long under an incandescent 75-watt light bulb. I mean, and we lived in Pacoima, where this book, at the beginning, and the thing is that we were in the middle of a rough area in Pacoima as we grew up. It was 1/3, they call it Mexican-American, 1/3 black, and then 1/3 white trash. And we were in the white trash category. But we tended all the people. My dad he was a construction worker just starting. He hired people from the Mexican part of the area, from the black part of the area. And plus he built a big baseball field, and all of his kids of all colors played baseball. And I grew up in to me, a wonderful world of, dealing with people of different races and colors. And we always just enjoyed each other. But then things changed, as you get older, and as I moved away and into L.A., and then I saw things getting more and more, to me, somewhat dangerous, and so I moved to the islands to sort of like refuge, and of course there are politics out here too of the indigenous people and the outsiders. So it made me want to write a book touching upon these different things, and hopefully to bring a message that things are okay, just as long as we can laugh a little bit and share a beer and try to work things out. So, and my family was encouraging, especially my children, who would bring me information to me about the fact they were half-caste, so to speak, and they'd hear both sides of the argument, and they would tell me that, Dad, sometimes both sides are wrong, and we can see that, and we try to tell each side, what the change, and there's resistance. But I think part of the future is hope, in that we do have people of different colors that have gotten together and intermarried or whatever, and made things more peaceful and have people more contented. So that's basically the backstory of the book. And plus, at the time, I was being fired because of island politics. I was the only white guy in the office of all indigenous islanders, and they finally realized, hey, we got a white guy here and we have a local that wants his job, and so I was given notice. So I said, boy, I better make some money. Maybe I'll write a book.
I love it.
I scratched out a book, and ironically, my secretary, who was an indigenous, she typed it for me, and she liked it, and so I continued by rewriting it over the years and kind of updating, and I'm at this point where getting it published they call it a vanity press, and getting it on Amazon, and like I say, if I sell a few copies, counting my relatives, I should get up to about 5 copies. But again, I do get messages from people that have come across it, and most of it is positive, I have to say, and it makes me feel good that I didn't cross the line and make it that I'm some type of racist, I'm attacking. No, everybody's fair game in the book. And I want people to realize that I didn't want to cross that line because it is a line that you need to be cognizant of, to make sure that we don't upset other people. Because we all have our fears and our needs and our wants, and we have to, be understanding. So anyway, that's the backstory and maybe some of the front story.
Well, and we've given them a really good overview of the book, so I'm sure that they want to know where they can find it. And you did mention Amazon, so let me just there may be somebody in our listening audience who has never bought anything from Amazon. I can't imagine that, but I always think there may be somebody. So if they decide that they want to look at your book and perhaps get a copy, all they have to do is put in www.amazon.com and then just click on that from the browser in your computer, and it will take you straight to the Amazon homepage. Now, that homepage can look pretty intimidating, but if you just look, there's a big, sort of a gray box that's actually a search box. And if you'll just take your cursor and put it in that box and type Minorities, Minorities, comma, Inc., INC, period. A story of civic chicanery involving just about everything by Everybody, by Reverend, Reverend, Jussie, Jussie, the letter S, period, and then the last name Jackson, Jackson. If you just put that in the search feature, click on it, the book will come right up. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's a representation of the book cover. And if you see in the upper right-hand corner, there are 2 words. It says Look Inside. And if you'll just click on Look Inside, the book electronically opens. I always want to do air quotes when I say opens because it just electronically becomes available. And there is a really excellent excerpt from the book that's right there. You can read the whole excerpt, and it will give you a feel for the book. You'll find yourself laughing. He puts Paddy in some very precarious positions here at the very beginning of the book. And you can buy it right there on that page, or you can buy a Kindle copy and a paperback. There are several different copies of the book. So it's available right there. Now, I think, Reverend Jackson, that you have a website. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about the website.
The website is www.islandasylum.com. And the fact that when you live on a small island, it's sort of an asylum to me in a positive way, because you're trapped, and you can enjoy a lot of things, and some things are not available to you. And so we're all here and just try to all get along. And this website I put up several years ago. It's under construction now, and it should be available soon. And again, the name on the book is Reverend Jesse S. Jackson II, and I would appreciate anybody looking into getting the book and enjoying it.
When they do get the book and they read through it, The Adventures of Paddy Puzo, and they finish, they close that back cover for the very last time, do you want them to feel like they've just read a really entertaining story, Adventures of a Young Man, or is there something else that you really want them to take away from the book?
What you just said is true, that they enjoy the book, number one. Two, that they understand the intent of the book, that it is satire, and that satire, humor is very important and to us as humans. We're be able to poke, positive fun at each other and try to help us get through tough times. And I think we are in some very tough times right now, and very divisive times that are hurting a lot of people. And like for me, I find my children being mixed, half and half, you say, of color and white and person of color. They're sort of trapped in between, and I don't want them ever to be hurt in the future because of whatever color they are. And again, the book, I enjoyed writing it. It was painful at times, especially dealing with my hang up with commas. But yeah, just to enjoy the book and try to get a message out of it that I don't want to preach or lecture anybody. I just wanted to have something brought up that can be maybe something they could talk about in a way of not having to hit each over the head, with a chair or something. So, because it is a sensitive issue right now, and I hope it becomes more of a still a sensitive issue, but not overly sensitive to the point of destroying or hurting, other people in their lives. So again, yeah, I enjoyed talking with Suzanne here on this interview, and she's a real nice lady, and I appreciate the time.
It's been my pleasure. This is such an interesting book. I hope our listeners will pick up a copy and see exactly what we're talking about. And I want to thank you very much, Reverend Jackson, for being our guest today.
Well, thank you, and enjoy your stay in beautiful downtown Texas, and stay safe. And I hope the best for you and your family, and keep on moving forward.
Thank you very much. And remember, listeners, you can find Minorities, Inc., a story of civic chicanery, I can't get this out, involving just about everybody, by Reverend Jesse S. Jackson II on Amazon. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I hope you'll join us for the next Books on Air. You never know who's going to be here, and you really never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so very much for listening.